I have to do it so great that it does compete with, you know, the younger generation and whatever's popular and whatever's going on. And I feel like that's the task. But if you're gonna be in it, that should be the task. You gotta keep being great. When you gotta stop being great, then you gotta get out.
Thank you all for coming out. Welcome to Idea Generation's building session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce two gentlemen who I had the extreme pleasure of first interviewing over 20 years ago in Virginia Beach at their parents' house for XXL magazine. Two of the most critically acclaimed as well as celebrated rappers of their generation. Since that interview, they have gone on to put out a litany of classic material, both as a group and as soloists. So please, if you could put your hands together and welcome the Clipse, No Malice, and Pusha T. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Come on, man. Thanks for having us.
As always, great to see you guys.
Always.
So I want to talk about growing up first. I think, you know, I was re-listening to Lord Willin on the train coming down here from New York today, and it struck me that your grandmother is one of the most sort of important characters, especially on those first couple songs on the album. And so I'm curious, just sort of like, how did your exposure to her frame how you thought about the world?
I think I could say my grandmother, Jessie McCrae, she was known to us and to the family as always having and wanting and exposing us to like the finer things in life. Now they may have been ill-gotten gains, but you know, she introduced us to, you know, money and cars, and you know, these are things that you should have and you should want for yourself. So she definitely instilled in us like a certain kind of drive.
Okay. And how was that juxtaposed with your parents, who I know were much more sort of buttoned up professionals?
You know, I always think about like my childhood in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And you know, when I get to like the summer and I go visit my grandmother in the Bronx, it was like, man, that was like my freedom. Like my grandmother was like, oh, you know, go run to the store, go run get pizza. My parents were like, nah, we in the South and don't leave too far because we don't know what's going on out here for real. So, you know, I always looked at my grandmother as like the, you know, just like my rites of like passage to do any and everything.
Okay.
My grandmother was actually like younger than my parents, you know?
Yeah.
So she was one of those kind of grandmothers.
Okay. And where was it that you first fell in love with music? Was that in the Bronx when you guys would go visit her?
For me, definitely in the Bronx. I have an older brother, and he was always into hip hop, you know, break dancing. I can recall just watching him from the terrace downstairs. We lived on the 27th floor, and he and his friends would be, you know, on cardboard break dancing with the boom box, and I just always admired that.
Okay, and yourself?
Probably just from my brother. You know?
Oh, nah, for sure.
whatever my brother was into, I was trying to be a part of. Had a sister as well that worked at a record shop. You know, whatever, you know, he loved, she would get him and he'd play it, and, you know, I'm just following suit.
Well, to that, you know, brothers can often either sort of mirror each other or end up going in sort of opposite directions. So I'm curious, what was your relationship like, you know, as children?
Well, I'm almost 5 years older than Pusha.
Okay.
So, you know, whatever I was into, which was definitely music, I just love hip hop so much. And, you know, I always enjoyed introducing Pusha to like why this guy was hot, you know, or why this guy, you know, is not that good, and just telling him about, you know, lyric-driven hip-hop, you know what I'm saying? And I just put him onto it, and he just, like, took right after.
I told him Hammer was better than Rakim one day. And I had to sit down and listen to a whole explanation of entertainment versus lyricism.
Yeah.
So, Malice, I know that you started making songs probably in the junior high school era, and working with Timbaland, of all people. What was the nature of that sort of collaboration, and what did the music sound like?
So, like I said, always being into hip hop, I never took it serious because I never really thought it could go anywhere. But a really good friend of mine named Kelly Skinner, he said, yo, I got this guy make beats, you know, and he's really good. And it just happened to be DJ Timmy Tim, who we now know as Timbaland. And, you know, Tim he made beats we were actually a gang. All of us, we were like truly a gang. And Tim made beats for like everybody in the gang. We were called DDP, Def Dual Productions, so we each had a partner. And Tim would spearhead and you know, make the beats. And I would go over to Tim's house after school and just kick it with him, you know, his brother, and you know, just make music. And the beats were actually really, really good, even way back then, like phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Push, I understand that you surprised your brother by jumping on a record somewhat unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
It was a record called A Thief in the Night. And you know, by this time, you know, I wasn't rapping at all, but I was skipping school and, you know, just going to the studio, which at this time we were at Chad's house, Chad from the Neptunes. So it's Chad, it's Pharrell, you know, it's our homegirl, Tracy from Space, and Shay, NERD, all the NERD. And, you know, they made a beat, and I was like, man, I'm gonna put a verse on this joint. And I
had never rapped before this?
No, I never rapped before this. But let me say this, though, like, the foundation and the criteria was, like, laid. Like, you knew what the standard had to be. So, you know, I'm in there probably doing my best. I don't know, was Andre 3000 maybe out by then?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I was probably doing my best Andre 3000 impersonation. And everybody was like, oh man, that was dope, that was crazy. And Pharrell had this bright idea, like, you know what? Two dark-skinned brothers. Y'all gonna be named the Clipse, no Eclipse. Matter of fact, y'all black. And I was like, oh man, cause you know Cain and Abel, P got Cain and Abel. Like, you know, he sells the whole, like, Pharrell's greatest gift is a salesman. So he sold this whole thing, and you know, but this is back when rap had like 3 full verses. And so before then, my brother was a soloist, and he's like writing 3 full verses. It's taking, you know, forever to finish the song. He was like, and y'all can cut it in half now. This is what we about to do. And the Clipse was born.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what? I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. It's just such a great opportunity that I can't squander. Noah was talking about a song, you know, that we did called A Thief in the Night that Terrence was just describing. And we had a really good friend, Tracy from Space. We called her Space, and we just lost her recently, you know, to suicide. And you know, I just want to say, you know, because a lot of people are going through a lot of things right now. You never know what's on somebody's heart, what's on somebody's mind. People suffer in silence. So, you know, I want to bring this up and just say that we really need to, like, pay attention and talk to one another. Don't be scared to share, and just check on your people, you know, when you can.
That's very important. So when you become the Clipse, I'm curious, had you already been in the military?
So I was in the military right out of high school, and I just remember talking to Pharrell. I was at Fort Bragg, and Pharrell would always like call, like, "Gee, how much longer you got in the military?" You know what I'm saying? And I only had 2 years and 23 weeks. I signed up for 2 years and 23 weeks, and he was like, "Yo, you know, you're gonna get out. We're gonna get this deal," and that's exactly what happened. You know?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So from that moment where he christens you and puts you together, how far from there until you felt like you started making records that you felt like sort of communicated the idea of what you wanted to artistically?
I think pretty much immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, we would go, you know, get in Chad's station wagon. We would drive to New York, and we would let the A&Rs hear our music. And
We thought they were A&Rs. They were like mailroom people. Sometimes, most times.
Sometimes.
Most times.
But you know, we would. I never worried about whether they liked it or not. You know, it was like if you didn't like it, I would swear something was wrong with you. That's how much we really believed in, you know, what it was we did. So.
Okay.
Yeah, had a lot of confidence about the music, the beats, the rhymes. Yeah.
Yeah, what you were doing was, I think, fairly avant-garde and pretty cutting edge considering what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, Pharrell starts to get some placements and some looks with Mace and eventually with Nori. And I know you guys end up, through that, landing a deal with Elektra for exclusive audio footage, which has only recently been made available to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
as a young man at Blaze, I had the little red advanced CD. But we used to talk about how crazy it was, how it really didn't sound like almost anything that had ever come out before. And I'm curious, you know, again, when you're crafting this, like, where did you see it fitting into the landscape?
Man, exclusive audio footage. I mean, at that time, I don't even think we thought that deep into music. Like, we were really having fun. Really didn't, you know, we didn't care where it landed. We were just like in the studio every day. This starts at like 9 in the morning and you're done at 9 at night. Just so we could go to the club and listen to whoever was out and go back in the studio at 9 in the morning and compete with that. But nobody, like all of these, like, you know, intricacies and landscape and, bro, we didn't talk, like, we didn't think about shit like that, like, at all. Like, I mean, you know, and we just wanted to be on. That was, you know, that was the thing. It was like, yo, we gotta get on. We gotta show that we're the best. We gotta show that we're like, you know, we had to show off Virginia. Like, that was our biggest thing.
But we believed we were the best too. Like,
Yeah.
we really bought into ourselves.
Yeah, like
straight up.
Well, they
was
say you have to
easy.
be a little bit delusional in order to make it, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
So you put out the single, and it unfortunately does not do what your delusions are hoping to accomplish. And I'm curious.
It did for me. It was everything to me. I don't
Just
know what it
having
We
I
were
don't
on
know.
TV. We got to shoot a video at
in
home.
our neighborhood. Yeah,
What?
it was everything. I don't know what it was supposed
got a
to be, but it was
Grammy.
everything to me.
Damn near.
Yeah.
Well, in retrospect, do you feel like the world wasn't ready for the Clipse, or the Clipse wasn't ready for the world?
Man, you know what?
Yeah.
I'ma say, you know what? I'm gonna say that the Clipse weren't ready for the world. I'm gonna say that. Simply because, you know, after that album got shelved, again, because we love music so much, we didn't even look back at it. We just went on and made Grindin and Willin, and no extra songs, no extra records. What we made was what we made, and that's what y'all got. And we knew exactly what it was. And, you know, it wasn't anything like, even losing that deal, we didn't like wallow in like pain, like, oh man, we ain't got no deal for a while. We watched Pharrell work with other artists, Philly's Most Wanted, and, you know, these were our brothers, you know what I'm saying? And they got their shot while we were still trying to cook up the second one. And, you know, just watching Nori, watching, Nelly, watching Mystical. We watching everybody get hits. But we always knew what we had. And we always made sure that they had nothing that we had.
I'm sure.
No, for sure. Like, and that's why Lord Willin was what it was.
I'm also curious, you know, going back and listening to the funeral today, again, on the train, coming up here, it was the first time in a long time that I've heard it, and your rapping is pretty dramatically different from how it would be on Lord Willin, just in terms of how you're intonating, your tone, all of that. And so I'm just curious, what was the catalyst that sort of pushed you guys forward?
Man, probably mixtape era competition. Like, you know, competing and wanting to compete. And just so you're clear, like, we couldn't get on like New York mixtapes at the time. So everybody who was hot, or, you know, I'm listening to the Locks like y'all listening to the Locks, and I'm like, you know, this shit fire or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Clue tapes, so on and so forth. But, you know, we felt like we were good enough, but none of those DJs were like rocking with us. So it just drove us more. We didn't have like those outlets. And we just knew that the verses had to be tight. We knew the verses had to be crazy. We knew that we had to be able to put it up against, you know, everything was made with the mindset of like, man, we got to be at the front of the Clue tape or the end of the Clue tape.
So you guys put out Grinding, and it's a very, very slow build. Because like you're saying, you know, you guys were not from New York. You've had this moment that didn't quite pan out, so you put the record out, and you know, again, as someone in the press, I remember it getting serviced to us, and like, oh, that's cool, you know. But then slowly but surely, it started to build and build and build until, you know, between probably what, like February and May or June, until it reaches a real peak at the beginning of that summer of 2002. And what were the dominoes that were falling that was propelling the record forward and creating that momentum?
Drugs. Drugs and drug dealers. No lie, I'm just saying. Like, you know, he's talking about the slow build of the record. The record, to be honest, took 9 months to build. Like, it took 9 months for that record to like become Grinding. In those 9 months, like, we probably did every $500, $1,500 show, $2,000 show for every drug dealer across the country, because that's who knew what the record was about. Nobody else knew what the record, what we were talking about. So we would go to Columbus, Ohio. We would go to Cincinnati. We go to, you know, different cities where only those who understood 4.5 will get you in the game, like, you know, and we were doing clubs and parties for like neighborhoods. Man, just do that Grinding joint again. Like, we walk in a place like this, they sit right here and they want to hear Grinding 9 times. And it's, you know, and you can tell, you know, you looking at the whole dynamic of you in Kansas City, Missouri. You see who's who and what's what, and that guy is like, he's funding everything. He's like, nah, do it again. We got to hear this. I'm telling y'all, this is my favorite joint. But only, you know, and once we did that across the country, like, by the time we got back east, I think, you know, I remember that whole tour.
Me too.
Yeah, like it was dangerous as hell.
The turtle van.
Like,
yeah.
It was dangerous.
Did your performance also improve?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, the repetition, but I think at the end of the 9 months, Diane Martell in the video really took it over the top.
Absolutely.
And they had a chance to really see us in our element and at home. And yeah, it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, that was a big thing too.
Yeah, that was
huge.
I mean,
like the video was a thing.
It for anybody who didn't catch on, when they saw it in action, then they like totally got the whole picture.
Yeah, I mean, the beat was very left field, and that sort of contextualized it in a way that I think everyone could understand.
Yeah.
And it was kind of also you know, you have to think about what was happening at that time with our producers. Like our producers, you know, the Neptunes, they're on every record. Pharrell's probably singing every hook. So by the time you get grinding and he ain't on the hook or on the record, the executives were like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me y'all gonna take one of these type of records versus, you know,
Everything
him
that was going
crooning
on, yeah.
through the, you know,
But
on the
seeing
song?
him do the Pharrell sound,
Yeah,
like that pantomiming, I think really took it over the top.
yeah.
So at this point, you put the record out. It's a huge success commercially. Having been on a fairly long road with a lot of starts and stops and some big disappointments, what was that feeling like to see that first week SoundScan numbers?
Man, I think by this time we were like hip to SoundScan numbers and things like that. So, you know, once we knew that we could like be number one, we were like, oh man, you know, I think we were like number 4.
Something like that, yeah.
Like number 4, 122,000 records the first week. And
That's $17.99 CDs. That's not
yeah.
equivalents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not streams. So you know, it was impressive, and we just felt that it paid off. But we honestly, you know, we took that walk. Like we knew what those steps meant. Like we knew what those steps meant.
So after achieving this level of success, you sort of get thrown into a weird corporate limbo due to forces completely out of your own control. Arista ends up getting sort of subsumed by Jive, and you and Pharrell's whole situation gets splintered, and it's a whole messy thing that ends up really delaying the second album. How did that information even get sort of communicated or messaged to you as it was all playing out?
It just
What, man?
it just went bad. Like it just went bad. It just went bad, and I hated everybody. Like I was just, it just went really bad.
That's all I was letting you say. it,
Yeah.
You know, again, we were on such a high, and we were on the road for so much of like the talks, you know. So by the time we came off the road and like the reality was setting in, like, wait a minute, we're not putting nothing out, and y'all are arguing back and forth with the label, and
time was passing.
and
Fans upset.
yeah, you know.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't even know how I felt about it. I mean, I know we were playing a loyalty game, you know what I'm saying, just because that's what we do. But we didn't necessarily understand it.
Okay.
Good job.
Well, Pharrell famously withheld his services from Justin Timberlake in an effort to try to get you guys off the label.
Right.
And you may or may not have made some terroristic threats to certain people in the office.
We got banned.
Got banned from the
We
office.
definitely got banned from the office.
Having now been on the other side, you've been the president of good music. You have Airwave.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any more empathy for the other people, the people on the other end of those phone calls now?
I do.
It's very mature.
I mean, you know, I think, well, it was business. And that's, you know, as you get to the, you know, as we understood and learned more about it, it was business. And had it been presented to us as business, I think we would have been like, all right, it's business. This what, you know, this is what we signed up for. There were a lot of personal feelings in there. There was a lot of entitlement. There was a lot of like, oh, you know, I've done this much for the company. Y'all can let my group go, and you know, which in the in a world with the heart, all of that works, but not in the business. You know what I'm saying? Not in this business, and
it's just something you have to prepare for getting into this business.
Yeah.
You know, artists are very passionate about their creativity and their work, and then when it gets traffic jammed, you know, behind the politics, of course it's gonna, you know, discourage you a lot. But you have to just be willing to work through it and to keep going, hence, you know, the We Got It for Cheap mixtape.
I was gonna say, yeah, to that point, you guys, rather than just get mired in the frustrations, sort of channeled that into just creating work product and serving the market.
And was able to tour really well off it.
Was that sort of a bitter pill to swallow after having sold a bunch of CDs for $17.99 to then be putting stuff on the internet?
I hated everybody. Definitely.
He really
definitely. Yeah, I was very angry. But I mean, and especially just like you say, having that level of success. But the good thing about it in doing the We Got It for Cheap mixtapes is that it was very well received, and it brought us back to the, you know, like the Game of Thrones, just in it and just rapping for your life. So it was a lot of fun as well.
I also think it birthed like the internet.
Yeah.
It kind of birthed that internet fandom during that time. That was like, you know, that's We Got It for Cheap mixtapes. That's the blog. That's blog era rap. That's you know, that's Bathe and Ape and the kids coming to see you and they having on the jackets that you have on and they're pointing at you and they're, you know, that you can see who your actual fan is and you can see your influence.
I was gonna say, I know you've talked about the Clipsters.
Clipsters, right.
And that was really like a reinvention of your fan base, because prior to that, you had big records on urban and crossover radio.
Right.
And, you know, sort of with the mainstream rap audience.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you had this sort of like cutting edge cool guy fan that, you know, ultimately I think has ended up sort of paying enormous dividends for both of you guys in the long term.
Yeah. You know, and be clear though, like we didn't understand it. I was just saying the other day, I had to apologize to an agent just recently, because during that time we were putting out those mixtapes and I couldn't find the mixtapes I used to buy mixtapes from like Norfolk State University, you know, and just be outside and the guys be outside, they'd be bootlegging, whatever. That's where we used to get it from. And when we put out those mixtapes, I couldn't find the mixtape in the streets. I had, you know, it was online. And I'm like going crazy on my agent. I'm going crazy on the DJs, like, yo, where's the music at? You know, I don't care what it says on this blog. I don't care if we got 5 stars. You know, the streets weren't hearing the music to me. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that fan,
We had a whole different fan base.
it was a whole different fan base that was happening right in front of my eyes, and I didn't see it. And I saw this agent like 2022, and he reminded me. He was like, "You cursed me out." He was like, and I was like, "Bro, I'm so sorry." I was like, "Listen, you were so right about all of this." I seen him at a show, and it was like, you know, it was, you know, that whole festival.
Yep.
Everything that's happening right now was built from then.
So after you do that, you guys sort of come to a amicable agreement with Jive that they're going to distribute your record, and you're going to not call them and go crazy. Although I did notice, rewatching the Mr. Me Too video, that you did sort of like try to assassinate 2 red and white executives in the middle of it. I'm curious how that video went over in the office.
Terrible. They listen, you know, and listen, right now, Barry Weiss, great friend.
Really?
Today, yeah.
Look at that.
Great friend right now. But that's, you know, we was at war then though.
When you put out Hell Hath No Fury, you know, the record is obviously critically received incredibly well. It's deemed a classic by XXL and just broadly speaking by the world.
Right.
but it doesn't recapture the same sort of radio success that the first album had. You know, you talked about sort of this reevaluating the fan base and creating new fans. Were you guys cognizant of that in that moment, or were you frustrated with the performance?
Well, for me, yeah, once again, frustrated. And, you know, like I said, just really getting into the raps and just heart and soul and passion and anger and, you know what I'm saying? That's where all the energy came from me on Hell Hath No Fury with what we had been through. So I never really like think of the strategy or who's listening or who's what. It's really more like what I'm really and truly feeling.
Okay. You'd mentioned, Push, that, you know, when you made Lord Willin, you made the 10 songs that are on Lord Willing.
Yeah.
And I understand on the second album, it's the same.
There are no extra songs.
Ever.
Ever.
Tell me about that. Explain your process.
There are no...
You never start anything that doesn't get finished?
Never.
Nope.
Never.
No. We made it, I mean, if we start it and it doesn't like check off a few boxes, we don't use it.
Okay. So you just don't take it to completion?
We don't have like extra songs to pick from, or let's, you know,
Yeah.
It's like if we're working on it, we're using it.
Yeah.
We don't do 30 records and then go back and, you know, pick 10.
And between the two of you, what is the process of developing a song?
Who gets the beat? Well, whoever gets the beat first, and whoever gets the beat first, usually they write the verse, and then you're competing with what he wrote or what I wrote.
And the choruses get figured out later?
The choruses are usually something that's happening in the studio, you know, with
At the same
Pharrell,
time as the beats get made.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
They usually go hand in hand.
Yeah. That's also a criteria though. If there's not a beat, or if there's not a chorus or a chorus cadence for the song, it's usually not it.
And in terms of putting together the full records, at what point do you know sort of the scope of what it's going to be?
I think the record is formed when the beat and the hook it sort of dictates everything. In that moment, you know, you might get it. You'll get the hook, you'll hear the beat, and you might get a flow pattern. And then, you know, you just run from there.
Okay.
And
were you
I'll
gonna
add
say?
to that. You know, and for me also, it's the intellect of a song. Even if you don't know, like, where it's going. Once I find a standard that really hits home with me, it's like just never go below that standard. You know, you have to find the intellect of how you want the song to be interpreted or internalized, or how you want people to see it. And when you get that high watermark, you just want to take it from there and just go higher.
Okay. On the third record, now, I understand that you were very sort of quietly contemplating changing your lifestyle and...
Oh, you could hear it all through the, you know,
And I know
album.
that you really dislike some of those songs, particularly the Carrie Hilson record.
Wow.
Not because of Carrie, but just...
Right,
Wow.
be clear.
When you were making that, what were the conversations that you guys were having about the creative process, about the work product, about the outcome?
Well, during that time, I feel like everybody was like, you know, in their own world. Like, you know, we were working with multiple producers, something that we don't usually do. We only know how to make bodies of work. We only want to make
Cohesive.
cohesive. Like, you know, I think we worked with multiple producers on that album. The Neptunes did the bulk of that album, I believe. But we were sharing our time with them, with like other people. They were in pop land. They were seeing different pop things. They were, you know, giving suggestions like the Carrie Hilson record.
Not to throw anyone under the bus.
Yeah, but this is what we got to do, da. And you know, and it was like, you know, it was a compromise. It was so much of an argument. That's why you got Popeyes, because it was like Popeyes was like, the only way that we could have done the Carrie Hilson record is if we did Popeyes. That's the only way it was gonna happen. And they were like, okay, that's what it is. We're gonna put them out both too, and I'm gonna show you what's what. And
So when you got to the end of the road on that one, both of you knew what it was.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
And you had decided that this was not the
Beyond a
life you wanted
shadow of a
anymore.
doubt. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. I knew where I was going. I knew how my heart was speaking to me.
What was the catalyst? What was the moment that you, for the first time, had that internal monologue thought, I don't want to do this anymore?
Oh man, like it's just like the walls just came crashing. It comes a certain point in time, I believe, and I believe it should come in everybody's life, where it's a certain time that you have to take inventory and take stock of your life, and you know, just looking at yourself. And I think that's the beauty of it, because when you can look at yourself, it's not about telling anybody else what they're doing, shouldn't be doing. You just have yourself to deal with, and you have to be able to live with yourself. And it has to add up. Everything has to jive. And you know, I wasn't happy with just how I was living life at the time.
Were you anxious at all about having to tell Pusha how you felt?
No, not at all. Nah, like I told him a few times just in case he thought I was playing. You know, we had just got finished hanging out with Rick Rubin in LA, and you know, they're talking about albums, and I'm there the whole time like they don't even know I'm not gonna be here. So, you know, when we left with Rick Rubin, we got in the elevator, and I told my brother, I was like, yo, I'm not doing this anymore. And you know, we don't ever question each other about anything. Like, we always respect each other, and we have always respected each other's thoughts. So if it was something that, you know, he wanted to do, like, we're not like joined at the hip. You know, we're two totally grown men, and if it's working and it's going together, then we ride that ride. If one of us decide that something else has to be done or has a change of heart, you have to respect that. You know what I'm saying? We don't owe each other anything. When it's good, it's good. You know, and then when it ain't so good, you know, grown men got to do what they got to do.
And did you feel that relief when you stepped away?
Absolutely. It's what I needed. You know, it's definitely what I needed to do. It was the perfect decision.
Well, when No Malice did that, you sort of pivoted your entire career, and it happened to coincide with sort of some serendipitous invitations to Hawaii.
Yeah.
I interviewed Steven, I want to say about a year and a half, 2 years ago. He told me a funny story about you guys going out to Hawaii and then you deciding abruptly to go home after like 24 hours, and then him having to sort of pretend to Kanye that you were still there, and,
right.
and then getting him back on a plane to come. What compelled you to go home?
Man, I just was not used to his like working process. I didn't necessarily like it. Too chaotic, too many people around, you know. And like, I don't know, I write and I write and I think something is great. And when I think it's great, that's what it is. That's what I felt. Like, he's like very perfectionist, very, no, this one can be better, it can be better, this can get even better. And I mean, you'll be working on something for so long.
Listen, I have to say, like, Steven called me and told me, your brother is in here having to rewrite a song like 100 times. And I was like, yo, you know, what you gotta rewrite the song for, whatever. And it was, you know, because that's just what the song had called for, but I couldn't for the life of me understand, like, we the Clipse, what we write is, is what it is, da-da-da-da. But yeah, it was a special kind of hell he was going through.
Yeah, it was a new day. It was a new day.
Well, I remember those were a lot of also late nights. I know you are early to rise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another thing though. Like, I was saying earlier, like I've only learned to record early in the morning to, early evening. Like I don't, after 9 o'clock, I'm no good in the studio. I don't have that. I don't even stay up late. So it's like, these guys are all-nighters. They're like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I'm asleep in the studio. I'm like, why do we gotta stay up this late to do this? Like, it's like, music has always been like work, and it's been like, 9 to 5. 9 to 5, we go eat. After that, we go into the club, and you gotta get into the world too to even know what you're gonna rhyme about the next day. So all this 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and midnight, wake up, come on, everybody, let's go. This is 1 in the morning. Why am I waking up? I'm like, nah, I gotta go. I have to go home. like, no, this ain't for me.
So during the 2010s, you record several solo albums, as do you. And then in 2019, we are finally gifted with a reunification of the Clipse on Use Your Gospel. What was the conversation like that got you guys back together to record that record?
I just remember my brother calling me, and he had asked me, he said, yo, Ye wants to know, can he get your number, and can I give it to him? And I told him, yeah. I said, go ahead, give it to him. And I got a call from Kanye, and I knew he was on, his faith and his belief in Jesus. So my thought is, I said, wait a minute, God, you doing something. I'm thinking it's gonna be me, Ye, we gonna tag team him, jam him in the sandwich, and we gonna ride off into the sunset. So, we go to, I go to Wyoming, and Ye was just talking about, doing some work. He said, I don't even know how to rap for God or something. I said, well, we'll do it, we'll write it. And he was like, perfect, and he just let us, work on the album, which was a blessing. It was, really good, and we did use this gospel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from there, you guys ended up doing the record on Nigo's album as well.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a breadcrumb trail to something larger that might come in the not-too-distant future. Is that a reasonable thing for a Clipse fan to think?
Man, I think that everything that's been asked of the Clipse is kind of undeniable. Like, these are all like family situations. So like, Nigo asked for a song. It's like, you gonna
Gotta
do the
do
song. Yeah, you
Gotta
gonna do the
do
song. Man.
Your album.
It's almost
Yes.
dry.
Gotta do it.
We gotta do it. For me, I'm gonna let you know personally, like how it was for me. I've always wanted that, but this was the way that I could ask for at least participation without it being too heavy. You know what I'm saying? Too heavy, or have to go into a conversation of anything else. And I think that it's brought the fun back. I think it brought the fun back.
Is there more that the Clipse want to say to the world? Malice.
Nah, not at this time.
Fair. I don't know if you guys saw the news floating around today, but earlier today, André 3000 was talking about his new Flute album, which will be hitting tonight at midnight. And in that press run, he was saying that he basically didn't want to make a rap album because he was 48 and he didn't feel like at that age he had anything to rap about. And you gentlemen are both men of a certain age as well. And I think also clearly performing your craft at the highest level of your career still. Do you think that there is any sort of age limit on rap?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think so at all.
Definitely not.
And I think it's kind of, I think it's kind of stifling to the genre to even think like that. Like, man, as long as you're living rap and you live in hip hop in all capacities, and as long as you still sharp with that pen, like, you got something to say. I mean, we want to hear it.
Yeah. And not only, living hip hop, also to add to that, living life. If you have something to offer, if you have something to say, just information, and you're still creative, you can go on for it. I can even appreciate someone who says it ain't for them and they don't want to do it, and that's where they are with their life. But as far as who you are and what you have to offer, that should never stop.
There's also been a little bit of discourse around artists and whether or not there should be an expectation that they grow with their fans and mature with their fans, or whether or not they should sort of continue to try to compete with the kids. And again, you guys, I know both of you have been very sort of forward-leaning and embracing of the youth within hip-hop during the course of your tenure. But I'm curious, as you think about your own music and your own musical choices moving forward, how do you think about that?
When I think about, like, artists and people maturing with their fans, I think about myself, and I think about how, whatever it is that I do, I try to make it so that I can compete, make something so great that it competes with everything without compromising who I am. Like, my content's not changing. You know what I'm saying? It's not. You know what I'm saying? Like, the lyricism is not changing. The fundamentals of hip hop for me aren't changing. Like, that's not. Like, that's what it's gonna be. So, I have to do it so great that it does compete with, the younger generation and whatever's popular and whatever's going on. And I feel like that's the task. But if you're gonna be in it, that should be the task. You gotta keep being great. When you gotta stop being great, then you gotta get out. That's right. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in summation, we can expect a classic Clipse album in 2024 is what you're saying.
Man, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
You guys heard it here first. Cool. I know tomorrow night you guys have a show at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the people in this room should be anticipating, looking forward to?
Oh, man.
Just a good show, full of energy, like a real show. You know what I'm saying? Nobody just standing around. Real lyrics, classic hits, and just a really good time.
Just energy, man. This is a Survivor celebration. That's what's happening at the Kennedy Center tomorrow.
Very nice. Well, thank you both for your time and
Thank you,
energy and your wisdom. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, bro.
Appreciate it, man.
Always.
That's what it is.
And thank you guys all for coming out here. And yes, let me give a toast to you guys for joining us for this building session, and to our partners at Tres Generaciones, the tequila for those who fail twice and get up.
Tres.
Tres.